The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Friday, the 10th of June, 2016, are currently trading with gold at $1,273.54 an ounce, silver $17.32 an ounce, Texas crude $50.56 a barrel, and Bitcoin seems to be leveling off at 580 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1967, the states of Israel, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt end the Six-Day War with assistance from the United Nations. Arab casualties are estimated at around 20,000, while fewer than 1,000 are estimated for Israel. Though the ceasefire wasn't signed until the 11th, the United Arab Republic began their retreat between them and Israel in the Six-Day War. Today in history. In recent news, Brian Armstrong recorded an incident around noon outside the Dallas Love Field Airport today, where an unidentified man was shot several times right by the entry-exit doorways by the police. Of course, the airport was briefly placed on lockdown. Dallas Assistant Chief of Police Randall Blankenbaker said that a number of people who had been waiting to get through security when the shots went off ran past the TSA workers to get away from the chaos, and this was the reasoning for the lockdown. Apparently, the man who was shot and a woman, the mother of his kids, got in some kind of domestic dispute outside of baggage claims when the man began to use rocks to attack the lady. When she cried for help, the police showed up, and then he allegedly began to charge the police, which led them to firing several rounds into him. Luckily, she wasn't hurt, and the officer that shot the man was placed on leave, as is normal procedure following any shooting. The incident is under investigation. Alphabet Incorporated's Google is battling accusations that it manipulated its predicted searches function to favor Hillary Clinton. This is after SourceFeed, which is owned by Discovery Communications, showed that typing Hillary Clinton, CRI, into a Google search box yielded suggestion queries related to crime reform, crisis, and a crime bill, but it didn't include the suggested search of Hillary Clinton crimes. That is, although Google statistics show that search is more common than the suggested ones. Google said in a statement that, quote, Google autocomplete does not favor any candidate or cause. Claim to the contrary simply misunderstands how autocomplete works. Google also said that autocomplete software won't show a predicted query that is offensive when displayed in conjunction with a person's name, which apparently crime is listed in the list of offensive terms. This is Rick Rohde with your lowdown for June 10th, 2016.
Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Lucky Chewy Lichtenberger coming to you live. It is Saturday, June 11th, 2016. It is just past noon in Las Vegas, and I'm here with David Burke. Lisa Wampole is also on the line, and we have Ryan Meefsel in Austin, Texas. How you doing in Austin, Ryan?
Doing wonderful. Good to have all of you back here stateside, I guess, after your travels abroad. How do things feel being back in the good old the US of A?
It actually feels really good to be back in Vegas, but I think it's the home, knowing that you don't have to check out of your own home.
Oh, yeah.
Nice feeling.
No expiration date on when to leave your own house is true.
Yeah, most definitely not. It's really a great thing. Most people live with all the time, but until you start moving around, you forget how nice it is to just be able to settle down.
Makes sense. There's no place like home, as they say, I guess, right?
They do say that, and I would agree with that.
Very cool. Well, I guess any differences after having traveled so long and being back in the U.S. that you've noticed, just in general, or?
It's a lot hotter here.
It's hot here too in Austin. Actually, the temperature kicked up after I got back from Cleveland. It's definitely in the heat phase here.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a shock to the system going from wintertime in Australia, and we were freezing, and I was wearing my coat and my hat to bed because there wasn't a central heating in one of the places we were staying at. And then now I was sweating so much last night, and I had to turn on the fan and bump up the air conditioner because I couldn't sleep because of the heat. So it's completely opposite and a little bit of a shock to the system when you go from cold to hot in a week. But it's nice. I'm happy to be in the warm weather, actually. I prefer to be too hot than too cold.
I'm right there with you for sure. It's definitely, it's like 90 and like 60% humidity in Austin. So I was outside for a while with the parkour class, and you really, really feel it. It's definitely different than, 70s and 80s once you start getting into that 90 range. And I think, where are you guys at in Vegas now? I saw in the hundreds a couple days, it looked like.
Yeah, it's around 100 degrees. I don't even know. And of course, my air conditioning in my car doesn't really work that well. So it's like I have to I'm bringing a change of clothes with me. I have a patient this afternoon, and I'm bringing a change of clothes with me because I know I'm going to sweat through the first layer by the time I arrive on the other side of town. I'll be drenched. So it's hot.
You're being gifted a shower in a very unusual way.
Yeah. But we're used to it. This is Las Vegas. It's a little bit warmer than most summers, though. Earlier this year, everyone is saying. So we're in for a hot one. Sometimes when it's so hot here, I remember a couple times sticking my hand outside of the car window, and it was 117 degrees, and it just feels like someone's blowing a blow dryer on your skin because it's so hot. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, the hottest days in Vegas definitely make you realize that being in the desert is a very interesting place to be. I can see why throughout time people have taken refuge in caves and mountains because, well, if you're out in the sun, you're not going to last that long.
Yeah, I often think about that, what people would have done back before there was air conditioning and just all the things that we have in our modern world that are convenient to us, and we're nearly destitute without them, like air conditioning. I really don't know how people survived in the heat, but somehow I guess people figured out a way.
I think it's also a comparative experience. Like if they only know X, for example, as their experience, that's all they know. They might imagine what it would be like to experience Y, but until they actually do, they just don't know what it's like. So it's in some way maybe easier to deal with, or maybe they're just easygoing without technological advances. These hypothetical people in this hypothetical society that we're hypothesizing on.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, we all functioned somehow without a cell phone back in the day. But now I can't even imagine what it would. It's so hard. You actually have to show up for your appointments when you say you're going to be there if you don't have a phone. But now it's like, what do you do without a phone? Of course you need a cell phone. So, yeah, it's definitely changing the way that we function as a society the more technologically advanced we become. And it's getting to the point where it's almost a little bit scary, some of the advances that they're pushing through. Like they're pushing through the RFID chips in people now for kids or for different, for animals. It started out now possibly for children or sick people. And I don't know. I'm not too sure about it. I don't think I would want to get chips.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm not interested in getting chipped. I think I already have a chip in my body, which is, my biology. So I feel pretty content on that level.
And when you look at the level of competency of the regulators that may be in charge of chips, I mean, if you want to see the incompetency of Hillary Clinton, ask Donald Trump. You want to hear about the incompetency of Donald Trump, ask Hillary Clinton. I mean, the idea that looking at the alleged incompetency they all make out, that these people would be in charge of putting something, overseeing the regulatory issues of putting something in your body, when, obviously you can truly see from the candidates that no one's perfect, and either side pointing out the imperfections truly makes you one concerned that the idea that they would oversee something that goes into your body is probably one would look at rather insane.
Yeah, definitely. They can't even oversee the where the money goes.
And you really break it down, like, say Hillary Clinton is awake for 12 hours. She's actually awake during that time. Between the toilet breaks, the coffee breaks, the lunches, the sitting, the handshakes, the friends, everyone knows how much work they get done in a day. So say she's able to focus for 1 hour
or 4 hours completely in a day. Well, there's like 300 million people, and we all know how many times our computers crash. Everyone uses the internet, your computer crashes. Everyone uses a software program, you need to get an update. If we have a problem with the chip inside, so we're going to call up, the president, say, hey, by the way, the chip that's in my body is making me sick, or it's not working. Yeah, it's as much as people want to make out their tech or tech savvy, or they understand we're going to singularity. From people who, like myself, who worked in electrical engineering, we're always being called out because things break. The wire broke, the circuit wasn't printed properly. It's endless issues with manufacturing, and we have an error rate. That's just normal. So the idea that we have this ideal romanticism with, we're going to have these really amazing microchips in our bodies that's going to connect all the time. Zuckerberg apparently got his email hacked or his Twitter account hacked because it was someone did that. And he has a pretty good understanding of technology. And then we have the email accounts being hacked of every major bank. And they're going to oversee what? They're going to see who? You got to bring it back from fantasy romanticism to a little bit of real functionality. How many people have driven a car that hasn't broken down? How many people have turned on a computer that hasn't broken down? How many people load software that hasn't broken down? Give me a break. Singularity. Singularly asleep. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. It sounds way too troublesome. It's one thing if it's something outside of your body that is broken, but if you've got something inside of your body that's broken, that's absurd. And who knows what kind of effect it would have on you, just on so many levels. With the energy
maybe they'll
coming
put
off the device.
DMV in charge of looking at your chip. Say your chip gets wrong, you line up at DMV with all the car people, and we know how efficient DMV is.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe next year the person's having paralysis because their chip's not functioning properly, but it's okay. We'll get to you in maybe 8 hours today or maybe tomorrow. Oh, sorry, yeah, your chip's out of stock. You're gonna have to wait because there's a strike in another country where we make that component that we decided to have a trade war with that week. It's riddled with such incompetencies, like such grandiose statements that are being made. Oh, yeah, we're going to do this. I really think it's got one thing in common. It's just like you learn in your graduate program at college. Ask for more money. Do the study. Write your hypothesis. And ask for more cash and do it again. It's a cash cow. These grandiose things are cash cows. It's an attempt to get more funding. We have some great improvements to science. We have some great improvements to technology, but the idea of such a grandiose thing is embarrassing for science, I think.
I also, I don't really see the point. I'm a proponent of, we're perfect right now, so why put a microchip inside the body? What is the actual reason behind doing such things?
Yeah, it's silly. They're like, your kid will never get kidnapped, or if they get kidnapped, you'll be able to locate them, and kind of come up with these silly reasons. I understand no parent wants their kid to get kidnapped, but it just seems like it's not worth it, to put your kid's health at risk, just because someone might kidnap them.
It's like in England, Andrew, they have how many CCTVs per person? They still have so many people missing per year?
Yeah, I think it was something absurd, like 400 people per camera. But,
wow.
I don't know if the microchips would really slow that down.
And when you look at the people who are telling us we should do these things, I'm sure if we look at their own lifestyle under a microscope, I'm sure their life would be dysfunctional, because it seems there's such dysfunctionality in the way these people push these things.
All right, we're coming up to a break, everyone. We will see you thereafter.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Follow the immortal path, meditate on the formless form, student of the art of war, slayer of the mode of ignorance. Follow the immortal path.
Hello, everybody. We are back on the air. This is Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior, because you're the spiritual warrior. And the idea is that if you nourish your body and treat yourself well and have positive thoughts, you're going to have a great experience. So I guess in some way we're here to inspire you to do that, because that's what inspires me. And Ryan, you said
Absolutely.
you were teaching a parkour class the other day, yeah?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun out here. Actually, the kids are learning quite a bit, and it was definitely warm yesterday, which made it interesting. But I'm really blown away by how quickly younger kids are able to learn things, and how, especially compared with adults, it just seems like it takes a really, really long time for them to process stuff. But kids, you teach them something like once or twice, and they play around with it, and they usually pick it up pretty well. So it's just kind of cool to see a really fast learning curve, I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah, it is really neat. It's like kids don't have that firewalled filter of reality where they doubt themselves or doubt what they can do. I remember I've done a decent amount of rock climbing indoors at different gyms, and bouldering in particular, which is where you're just climbing a short amount and then either topping out or jumping down and starting again. I ran into this kid that couldn't have been older than 12 years old, and he didn't even bother looking at the grades that other people had given them. He just, went and tried it. But by virtue of the fact that he wasn't concerned whether it was, level 4 or level 8, he, was able to climb different difficulties because he wasn't letting his mind get in the way of him completing the task. And I always thought that was fascinating, and it definitely made me think back to my own childhood and remember those moments where I was, I guess, my judgment or my perception wasn't clouded by what other people may have thought. So in that way, spending time around kids is definitely fascinating and enlightening.
I definitely agree with that. I even find that myself doing some of these parkour things, like, you're on a rock and you're trying to jump to the next one. And you're like, oh, what happens if I fall? And you're climbing a tree and you're really high and you're like, oh, shoot, if I fall, I'm going to break my arm and this and this. And like all these crazy thoughts just go through your head. And when you're a kid, you're just like, well, there's a tree, I'm just going to climb it. And there's no, there's no second guessing, whatever. You just go with your intuition. And, it amazes me too, a lot of times how these kids will sometimes, and a lot of the things that I do with the parkour classes teach them how not to get injured. So how to, land properly and fall and, absorb weight and transfer the weight. And I'm just blown away by some of the things that they're able to do, almost without second thought. It's like they just learn the thing and then they can apply it instantly to a variety of situations. Whereas I see adults a lot of the time, they are overanalyzing everything. What happens if this, if I get up here and this happens and then that, and all these thoughts almost, prevent them from actually even trying it. They've almost failed before they've begun.
Yeah, I'm just paraphrasing Ryan, but I remember there was a well-known orator who said that the people of our generation who will be leaders, will be successful, will be not those who can learn, but those who can unlearn the information that we've been told. Mm-hmm. Meaning that we've been told so many false things. There's some great things like the Teslas did, the fingerprints of truth that are ahead of us. But also there's the generations ahead of us have left so many falsities, so many lies. You look at the absolute failure of what's becoming an educational system in colleges, where it's leaning more towards ideologies and not the study of critical thinking or facts. And it's concerning that we look at all these protests going on at campuses where they're ending free speech. They're saying free speech is only free speech if the ideology of the school wants to hear it. And they're effectively shutting down any type of critical thinking in debate, and that transfers straight over to your science, your math, and your research. To be able to head towards understanding human cells development consciousness, you need to be so honest and so non-judgmental, and you need to just let things sit and observe them and see what they truly are. Let what you're observing speak for itself, and get the true answer from its perspective. Because our perspective only knows partially what we're studying. We need to really get into its makeup and understand its perspective. And, stopping free speech and debate on campuses that you're seeing in all the headlines, it's effectively going to move straight over into the research sectors of college, and then, controlled, politically ideology-controlled research technology companies are going to have the same thing. Oh, don't look at that particular idea that electromagnetic energy is what causes attraction, not gravity, because, you know, you're a bad person if you dispute anyone else's philosophy or ideology or theory, which we know these theories such as gravity, we can't talk about it as factual because even NASA says they don't know what gravity is. They're spokesperson. But we functionally can understand things like electromagnetism is measurable. But this fanaticism of ideology over fact is destroying our educational system.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that. I was thinking the same thing as you're going through that, is that these colleges and universities supposed to be higher education and, you know, a place where all ideas are possible and where anything is possible. And you really see that ideology, I think, already has possibly infected the research community, because you see so many studies now being funded whereby, you know, the results are already known before they even do the study. A lot of times these big companies, these pharmaceutical, these drug companies, or these supplement nutrition companies will give money and grants and everything to these researchers to produce specific results. And if the research doesn't come out the way that they want it to, then they end up not getting published, and they end up not, you know, basically telling anyone about the study. And I've had several professors tell me that has happened on occasion where the results didn't come out right and the study basically just disappeared from the face of the earth. So,
right, and that's right. And a lot of people also don't understand these advocacy non-profit groups, you know, who go out and raise money. They're raising money for an ideology. Mm-hmm. They're not raising money like, hey, we're going to find the truth. And they raise money and then they'll say, we need a study, and the study will be, you know, in a little think tank. You know, many of these people, they may come together and be like, okay, we need to show that, you know, bears that are in this region of the world are dying because we want to raise more money to pay ourselves to go and monitor the bears. And I'm just using this fictitious thing as an example. And so the advocacy research will be put together in such a way it's going to give them the result they want, for them to ask for more government taxpayer money, to ask for more money in public fundraising, to pay themselves, to go out and study something, which is based off them putting together parameters of the research to basically get the research they want, because they want to get the money. They want to keep their jobs. They're looking for a reason or a way to maintain their own employment. There's no truth guidelines when it comes to advocacy research. That's when you see all these crazy extremists out there saying X, Y, Z by this advocacy study. Well, an advocacy study, as we just discussed, the parameters are so manipulated to be in their favor.
I think, to me, one of the most interesting questions is, why spend your time, if these people are doing these things, which it seems like historically maybe happening, why spend your time doing something that doesn't actually like bring you that feeling of joy when you love what you're doing? And maybe they do love that. I don't know them. I'm not them. But it's always interesting when people spend their time doing things that they, I guess, think they have to do, but haven't, I guess, taken that extra step to allow themselves to feel like they can do whatever they love and still enjoy their lives. In fact, enjoy them more. And we're coming up to a break here. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Are you lucky? Researchers say living a charmed life is more about the choices you make than fate. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back with 4 behaviors that increase your odds of finding a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
According to psychologist Richard Wiseman, people blessed with good fortune practice 4 behaviors that set them apart. Lucky people don't wait around for a windfall. They make luck happen. They network and keep an eye out for opportunities, then they act on them. Lucky people develop their intuition and trust their gut feelings. Lucky people expect good things to happen to them. They persist in working toward their goals because they believe in positive outcomes. These expectations become self-fulfilling prophecies. And finally, lucky people turn lemons into lemonade. They don't dwell on setbacks. Rather, they find ways to take control and turn situations around in their favor. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
We
And welcome to Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. This is David and Andrew Lucky True Lichtenberger back in the US just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it is good to be back in some ways.
And we have Ryan Muetzel in Austin. We have Dr. Elisa over in Las Vegas.
I'm at the clinic today.
And just before I was talking a little bit how the research going on is, and Ryan was talking about if the research is very much now controlled, and it's not so much the pursuit of truth that's going on, it's the pursuit of let's create parameters of a study that has an outcome that we want, so we can either get money from the taxpayer through a government handout, or we can, like many, unfortunately, advocacy groups are doing, is making up their own studies to say that to create more fundraising for them to employ themselves to create more studies for themselves to then create more fundraising for themselves. And unfortunately, when the information is tilted, we don't get a better society. We don't get a better life. And unfortunately, for the people doing this, they really may never find the meaning of life. And pointing out, that this is so problematic going on in colleges right now and government, and what is a solution? Listen, with the show, we're about being a spiritual warrior. What are solutions? Well, I know when we're in overseas, Andrew and Elisa and myself, we on some of our break time, we actually went to different colleges and places where people study, research, and we went to both religious-based places and we went to state-based places, and you could definitely tell the difference between the ones that were religious-based. There was some type of moral compass there. There was some idea like, okay, yes, we understand we're here for business school to make money. We're here to be a doctor, and we've got to create patents, all these type of things. And there's always like the how to create wealth aspect of all colleges. But with the spiritual colleges, the religious colleges, there's also a moral compass of like, well, how can we do this? And it's going to improve the life of everyone here. It's going to improve my life. It's going to improve my country's life. It's going to improve the world, the world globally. And when we visit some of the statesville colleges, I remember we had a tour of one gentleman, and all he wanted to do was tell us of how amazing and awesome his school was and how they're so much better than everyone else was the way it came off, because they had this machine and they had that machine, and this really, really, really important person goes to their school who's got so much cash, really, really important. And this other really, really important group affiliates with their college. And it was just kind of like, I felt like I was in, maybe I was like 12 or 13 and playing sport, and someone's trying to sell me like a piece of equipment, saying like, well, this pro athlete uses this particular brand and he hit the ball really fast. So like, that's why we're awesome, and you want to be awesome like us. Like, the tour really wasn't into like, well, what noble truths are we discovering? Like, what, things are we doing that's going to uplift and create a better world? And that was probably the biggest difference I found between the private colleges that with some type of moral, spiritual compass, and the colleges which were state to where, or private, where there's absolutely no moral, spiritual awareness compass.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The schools that didn't necessarily have a higher purpose or a collective acknowledgement of a collective goal in mind is just, in my opinion, uninspiring in comparison to the ones that did, because, well, if everyone's working together on the same thing, it's kind of sweet. Like, life has purpose and everyone's joyful. There's an understanding of doing, what it is that makes you happy.
And Ryan, I know that you've gone to several different colleges, and we don't need to share the names of the college because, some people, individuals in the college, some of them are great people, spiritual people, good people, and then some people are the opposite. But overall, if the faculty's ideologies are based on basically Harry Potter science, then it trickles down and affects the whole entire school. They are appointing professors, they are appointing classes that aren't fact-based, but are on ideology-based things where they're a lot of times come out, they're just pushing their warped opinion, and they're welcome to have their warped opinion or their opinion, but they're not pushing facts and numbers. Like, science is like fallen out of the window. What is the differences you found going in both one of the top private, a religious, a state school? Like I said, we won't mention the schools, but what are the main differences, the good parts in each one and the not so good parts in each one?
Yeah, there's, definitely a lot of similarities and differences, I guess. And one of the thing that kind of blew me away as I started learning more about college is just the idea of a tenured professor, right? And you see this too in a lot of like government jobs and everything, where apparently if you just work for long enough at a certain place, or, you get your certain papers signed, like they can't fire you. And, you can kind of, there's no goal, I guess, to continually improve. And it really goes back to what you were saying earlier, that all these groups and all these people are out there trying to, either maintain their funding or maintain their job, and no one's actually trying to push the bar. And I find that very disheartening. And you see that too with a lot of kids that I'm going to school with that, end up looking for jobs. And, I've got kids that, got getting their master's degrees in kinesiology and are like, they're hoping to score an internship. And I'm just kind of like, wow, that's
Ryan,
kind of
sorry
crazy.
to interrupt, but just a crazy story that I think it was you and I, or Andrew and I, when we were at a state school where, actually it was I think this one else were at UNLV, it was a Las Vegas state school. And this girl that worked at the gym, so we're going to work out, she had nearly finished her bachelor's degree in film, and she was all excited that she was trying to get this internship with this tiny little, government influenced TV company. And a couple of days later, we saw her, and she missed out on getting the internship. And she was all like, my professor knows these people, I'm totally going to get the job. He's super connected, and my interview went great. And I'm like, does the job pay anything? She's like, no, it doesn't pay anything. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to pay your student loans if your job doesn't pay anything? She's like, well, I might get something out of that. I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds like gambling to me. I thought, gambling outside of a casino wasn't legal.
Well, it's a free roll.
That the interest is ticking. And then so we come up a few days later. Was this you, Ryan? Was this Andrew?
No, this is me.
It wasn't me.
It was really Ryan. Yeah. And like, I nearly fell over when she told me this.
Yeah.
Like this is where, an example where colleges are at, unfortunately, because they're not creating jobs. They're fighting over jobs which are now decreasing. And she said that, she didn't get the job because this other girl who had 5 years of experience already.
That's right.
5 years experience working in the film industry as an editor.
And not getting paid?
Getting paid. She got the internship, so she's going to work for something like 6 months for free. For free. Right? To hopefully one day get a job with this company. And we all know jobs are very part-time these days. And you're not looking, the company might be gone tomorrow. And she was like, yeah, that girl really deserved it. It's like,
wow. Yeah.
What's going on when you really deserved it and oh wow, she's so lucky type thing to work for free for 6 months? And what are you doing? You're learning how to use, say, an editing program that someone else built. Even at college, you're learning how to use things other people built. You're not learning how to create things.
Coming up to our break. More here. Stay tuned.
Descends to the earth, a time where the mind is defined and confined. We the people need to realign with the divine. A government for the people, by the people realigns. No more taxation without representation. It's time for the people to have their say. No longer the prey. Aligned with truth, there's nothing we cannot do. Divide and conquer lies and false promises. These are the archonic weapons of hurtful decay. The abundance of the earth is the perfect technology, and the golden age is now. Rise together as one. Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Lucky Tree Lichtenberger. You're listening to Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. I had a great time hanging out today. I actually have a poker tournament in a little over an hour, and I'm going to go prepare and get in the right headspace to be able to manifest a positive result. So with that said, I thank you all, and I pass it back over to my friends.
All right. Good luck, Andrew.
Good luck, Andrew.
Thank you.
Have fun. Be in your bliss.
Snowfield.
In the snowfield. I'll explain what that means actually to everybody. One of my favorite books, by Sri Aurobindo. He talks about how to become completely present. And when you're in that moment, when you're completely in the present moment and your thoughts are basically gone, there's no sound. It's complete stillness, like you're in a snowfield of just pure white. And I don't know if anyone's ever had that experience of just being outside in the snow, but sometimes there's just no birds and it's totally quiet and it's so still and peaceful. It's this amazing feeling. So it's kind of a nice thing to invoke that feeling of stillness. And so with Andrew, we always all of us try to work on becoming more present. And because when he's in that space playing poker, he can kind of be in touch with his intuition in a maximum way. And I really believe that is what helps him win. So that's what the snowfield is.
And back to the other snowfields.
Yes.
On the break, Elisa remembered I showed her this piece of paper once when we were at one of the state campuses. And I picked this paper, and it was a sorority information piece of paper sitting on the ground. I just, being a decent person, saw some rubbish and went to put it in the bin while I was walking past. And on the piece of paper, it had everyone must wear this particular brand of eyelashes tomorrow. And I thought, wow, that's unusual. You're telling everyone has to wear this particular brand of eyelashes. And
it was even all the same size too. I remember it was like number 47. This brand of eyelashes.
Yeah. And I'm not that familiar with eyelashes, so yeah, Elisa, when I showed the paper, has a better understanding than me.
It's a little bit weird gluing eyelashes on your eyeballs, I must say. But anyway.
Yeah, and then what's even more bizarre, then it said, some representative of some eyelash company was going to be there. So it said, this can improve your chances of getting a job, making good contacts in the industry. And it's just like, really? You're going to school for learning, I thought, to find the noble truths of reality? You're going to study all these great philosophers. You're going to discuss atomic energy. You're going to discuss the theory of being, and you're going to learn out some calculus. But hey, make sure if you wear your eyelashes correctly, because that's going to help you get a job. I mean, either the education system is a waste of money and time, which probably, according to many graduates, 90% of it is, and overpriced because you can just learn online. I mean, why do you have to keep going to do another? Pay so much for English classes. I mean, English has been taught for a very long time. They've had to do it very affordably online. But yeah, Ryan, so you were talking about some of the differences of a moral-based college, which I think, leads to the greatest truth. Treat others like you'd like to be treated, and listen to everyone's perspectives and look for truth and leave false egos at the door. But Ryan, so can you elaborate more about your experiences?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. It almost seems that colleges now are just becoming ways for groups of people to just repeat what they're told, right? If everyone just gets the same eyelashes, and then when they graduate college, everyone can just copy and do the same thing that someone else is telling them to do, and then they can all work together and help each other out, and get jobs and get money printed out of thin air while, not creating anything because they're part of the clan, right? So it almost seems like that whole mentality.
Yeah, it sounds like where does the RICO racketeering act start? And and your social networks from college. So just reading Hillary Clinton's resume, there's she went to Yale, and at Yale she met the who's who, of the elites and and it's just we're looking at a bunch of humans that have eyes, ears, nose, mouth, speak, right? We all have some critical thinking abilities, some more than others, maybe. But we all have, we're all human. And somehow her going to this magical place made her have this incredible ability to do what? It's and I remember talking to one of the people that I know who went to Yale, and they're like, oh, yeah, we have our own Facebook where it's only for Yaleys, and we all help each other with jobs and, with life and those type of things. It's like, well, where does collusion start and where does it stop? I mean, doesn't the company want the best person for the job? I mean, doesn't society want the best person for the job? Doesn't the government want the best person for the job? I mean, when we look at how overcrowded government financial sector is with the same colleges, the same names, and then it came out that Harvard had an issue, which who knows? It's you see one cockroach, there's probably 1,000 cockroaches. where I think it was Ryan, approximately 20% of their students were cheating their exams.
Oh, yeah,
That's
Harvard.
a
Yeah,
lot.
that's crazy.
And that's who they caught.
Yeah,
you know?
imagine what.
So, and then when you look at Harvard academically, to get into Harvard, they were explaining because there's a lawsuit where the Asian Americans their nonprofits have filed lawsuits against Harvard for discrimination. Because academically, they're showing that I think Asian Americans are one of the lowest amount of people to get into these Ivy schools in the US, but their scores are the highest to get in demographically. And you can look online, and I might got some of the details not perfect correct, but that's kind of what the Asian nonprofits are saying, Asian American nonprofits. But when you look at Harvard's intake, only 50% of the people accepted is on academics. The other 50% is like, legacy, family, friends. Jimmy walked your dog yesterday. Like, I don't know the criteria of what the other 50% is, but, to say Harvard is the leading academic school in the country, it wouldn't make too much sense when you look at 20% approximately of the kids being caught cheating, children who are very smart in America not being accepted in the school. I mean, it's just a private school. It's not they're not looking for the best and brightest in many times, because the best and brightest aren't getting in from an academic school level. And then we look at like the Harvard in Las Vegas, we have Caesars Casino. And it was, what was he, Ryan? He was the guy who took it over. He was the former head of Harvard Business School. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm sure
I think you're talking about Gary Loveman, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that the guy's name from Harvard?
Yeah, you can
Harvard
bring it up
Business
in
School.
he was, I think, the head of Harvard Business School or an academic on Harvard Business School. And now, where is the Caesars? They're in bankruptcy, right, Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's pretty incredible how, they just kind of stick him in there and then suddenly it's bankrupt. I mean, how do you lose money owning a casino? This is insane.
In Vegas, where you have
you're
a monopoly.
guaranteed based on the percentages to make money based on, just straight mathematics. How do you lose money in that business?
And, this is apparently a head academic of the business school, Mm-hmm. And so he apparently stepped down, I think, last year. But this is when, the company... How far did it fall, Ryan? From when they took it over? And they got money from who knows where, when you really trace where the money came from to buy all these casinos. Like, I mean...
But Dave, he was recognized as the best CEO in gaming and lodging industry by Institutional Investor Magazine in 2004, 2005, 2006, and 2007. I think it was inducted into the American Gaming Association's Gaming Hall of Fame in 2013. For making a company bankrupt. Like, this shows you the level of these awards, right? Like, let's just hand out a bunch of awards to each other, tell each other how awesome we are.
And when he stepped down, Ryan, can you bring up how much the company fell? How much did the company fall in?
No, I mean, I don't have the numbers on that. I don't know exactly. I think it's more complicated than that.
It's an approximate figure of like, when a company files bankruptcy, it's not doing too well.
No, it means they have a lot more debt than they're ever able to pay back. So they're trying to just eliminate all of the debts that are owed. Yeah, I guess he stepped down in February of 2015.
And then we have a look at Lockheed Martin with the F-35 fighter. The lady that was brought in charge, she went to Harvard, is my understanding also. And now we have this problem with the F-35 fighters over budget. Countries don't want them. They're not working. They're not flying. They're not protecting the country. $1 trillion. And and so there's major issues with the selection process of colleges, with research, with all these things. But I mean, Ryan, you've gone to many colleges. If we're putting together studies where the studies are just there to get a outcome that's designed to sell more stuff, not to find a noble truth, then is it a surprise our planes aren't working?
No, not at all. Yeah, in fact, it was to be expected.
David with Nourishment Spiritual Warrior. We have Andrew Lucky Chewy Lichtenberger, Ryan Mutzel, and Dr. Lisa Wampole. Just for the break, we're talking about some of the scandals going on in colleges and how colleges are starting to turn into just a network, a collectivist network, where they're just there to sell whatever the leading corporatocracies would like to sell, moving away from the idea of noble truth, pursuit of truth. But we're talking about like some of the crisis going on with Harvard School, and you'll see that it was Marilyn A. Houston who was put in charge of Lockheed Martin. She's also appointed by Barack Obama to the President's Export Council. She is a Harvard Business School Executive Development Program graduate person, and Lockheed Martin was the company put in charge of the F-35 fighter. So you just need to type in $1 trillion failure F-35 fighter into Google, into the internet, and you'll come up with an unending amount of experts, both with military experience, both with technical experience, academic experience, know-how experience, pointing out all the failures and problems and the over cost of the plane. And now we have all the NATO countries trying to find a way to not purchase the plane because it doesn't work, is their issue. But it's just another example of, how to fail with $1 trillion. And you start asking yourself what we could have spent $1 trillion on. There's so many other incredible defense contractor engineers and people in America that could have done an incredible job. But it's not just the cost of this failure. It's going to be the cost of maintenance, the cost of fixing it. They're saying there's something wrong with the engine now. The software doesn't work. The gun doesn't work. The ejection seat doesn't work. The list goes on and on and on. And it's a management problem. We've got great engineers in America. We've got wonderful people, hardworking, good people. And it just comes down to looking at, what's going on with management. And here it is, Harvard Business School Executive Program, Marilyn A. Houston. And then the other head of Harvard Business School, the guy who unfortunately led to what is deemed by many as the crash of Caesars Casinos. What was his name, Ryan?
Gary Loveman.
And he's another what do you call it? Harvard graduate. I'm noticing this commonality here. So Loveman, Harvard graduate, Caesars goes bankrupt. This lady in charge of Lockheed, they've blown through $1.5 trillion on this F-35, appointed by another awesome Harvard graduate, Obama, which we don't even need to go there. But I'm noticing a commonality between Harvard graduates being put in charge of businesses and significant failure, like monumental. It's almost like if they tried to bankrupt these companies, actually were going to try to do it on purpose, like they couldn't have done a good job as they actually did. It's a different thing. You see, Harvard fills up the Supreme Court. You see Harvard filling up the Obama administration, the executive branch, and taking taxpayers' money and giving it to your programs and you managing the taxpayers' money. Well, let's take a look at that. We've created $7 trillion of debt under the Obama Harvard administration. If I was in charge of, if I was investing in someone to make candies, and I gave them $7 trillion, right? Mm-hmm. And the company still was failing, you would get someone else to make the candies.
You would think so, but what I'm starting to notice in all these Fortune 500 and these big time corporations, and the same thing happens in sports. It's this idea of a revolving door, where there's a certain group of people in position, and a lot of times it's the coaching staff in the pro sports. And no matter how bad the team or the company does, what ends up happening is you step down, you take your golden parachutes and your money, and then for some reason you're qualified enough to run another company. And there's so few companies where you can take one here in Austin, say like Whole Foods, like John Mackey, kind of building it from the ground up. You don't see that anymore with companies where the people who are really instrumental in the actual truth and the knowledge, of being able to grow that company, being the person who's in charge. It's almost always like
it's almost like and we're not here to give financial advice, but it's almost like you have to really think about looking at where people went to school and who's been put in charge of that company to begin betting against the company on the market.
Yeah, that's all true. You kind of see that pattern with a lot of these companies. So if you could you could nail that down and see where the next victim is going to be.
Yeah, and you know what's it's so kind of outrageous about this Loveman personality who stepped down from Caesars, the Harvard Business School guy, is, you know, gaming, it's about math. You know, you
yeah.
You know, it's like
MIT,
you work the odds on the roulette wheel. The house always wins. You know, they say, you know, casinos are built on losers. You know, the house wins. You know,
insane.
You know the edge on blackjack. You know the edge on all the games there. And
they have a monopoly on this stuff too.
And a monopoly,
anyone can just open your casino. In the poker, like what Andrew's going to play, they're guaranteed to make money because they're paying over. They get a guaranteed rake on these games. So like, how are they losing money? This is insane. I mean,
and because you have to look at it a little bit deeper. I mean, are they really that bad, or does it just not matter? I mean, you'll see, like, you know, these people's careers, like this Marilyn Houston, who was in charge of Lockheed Martin. With this $1 trillion failure of the F-35, she's been put in charge of something else, and now they're apparently going to go buy up the U.S. manufacturer of different types of military helicopters. But you think, like, and they're probably buying with the money they got to build a plane that doesn't work. And you think about, like, this helicopter company is apparently successful. Let's leave them be. Let's let them do what they're doing. They're successful. Like, shouldn't the government step in maybe and be like, hey, you know, yeah, we gave you the cash for the $1 trillion plane, but please don't buy the helicopter company. We need something to work.
Wow.
You know?
I mean, here's a little hint maybe as to where the money is going. So Loveman, in 2013, made $7.6 million for a company that ended up going bankrupt. So, you know, maybe extrapolate that out between him and a bunch of his Harvard Business School friends that, you know, he's probably paying off and maybe paying more than should have been paid for, you know, things that they were purchasing. And I guess it is pretty easy to bankrupt a company when you're just basically giving handouts to all your friends and family, you know?
Yeah, and like we don't know, you know, what is really going on. This is all speculation going on here, and we're just asking, you know, like the listeners to, you know, begin taking a look at, like, you know, what's going on with, you know, our colleges and the graduates coming from these colleges. I mean, maybe a sorority at UNLV, the most important thing is to wear a particular type of eyelashes, because if you can fail that badly running billion-dollar corporations and companies, and you get another job doing the same thing, or you can drive the economy down trillions of dollars and you can get reelected. There's no real reason. It just kind of makes it turn into like kind of like the stagnation of like, why invent? Why seek truth? Why not just buy some eyelashes? You know, like why try to be creative? Why try to uplift society?
What's wrong with your own eyelashes?
You know, and I think that's why we've fallen so far behind. I was reading that, you know, they've officially said China is the world's strongest economy. And I spend a lot of time around Chinese culture, and a lot of people from China, huge influence in Australia of Chinese people. And they work really hard. You know, they study really hard, and they do get great grades. And, you know, a lot of it is just repeating, but, you know, they do work very hard, and they are really pushing the boundary in research. And, you know, is it just we've got an intellectual drain? I mean, I was also reading in the US that many of our top students who can't get into these Ivy schools are choosing to go to Ivy schools overseas. So if these top kids are going to China, it's one of the destinations for America's top students. They are going there because they get jobs working in China. They are going to the UK. They are going to Canada. They are going to different parts of Europe. They are going to Australia. These are the kids who were, you know, doing incredible in their grades, love what they did, and they couldn't get into, you know, these top schools. No matter, like, there's this one Chinese American kid who he had nearly all perfect scores in everything, and he didn't get in to, I believe, I forget which Ivy school it was, but the one he wanted in the US. So are we seeing like the Nikola Teslas of the world, the next, you know, free thinkers, the next ones who are going to push the boundary, leaving, going to other countries? Because, I mean, when you see a company given $1 trillion and, you know, underperforms on a plane, you kind of think, well, what's the point of turning up to the science fair? You know, it doesn't matter if my science works. It's not going to get me a job.
Yeah, that is all true.
Yeah. But David, when we had first brought this all up, you were talking about solutions. Do you see a solution to all of this kind of money madness where it's just all about, you know, a handful of people getting paid to do something that's worthless? How can we get out of this?
I mean, I think like it's a yin yang. I think that, people need to get really, really mature and realize that, what college they do go to is going to influence their life, because it's not, the type of social experience you're going to have. And then also people have to just be very, I guess, mature in seeing that, the generation ahead that is doing this, they don't have the millennial generation's best interests. They aren't looking for solutions. And I think why we're seeing such a migration out of California, New York to Texas, I think it's over 100 people per day, is turning up to Texas. When it was down in Texas, people referring to Californians as economic refugees because they're just turning up with a broken car and with nothing, hoping to get a job. Because a lot of these kids were unfortunately college graduates, and just talking about the huge homelessness in California, and how they were denied, to get the most simple jobs because they just said, weren't part of a group. We didn't fit into the right group. It wasn't based off their hard work. And then, meeting a lot of Americans overseas, I'm like, why are you over here studying? Well, I weren't allowed to get into the school I wanted, or I'm not going to be allowed to get a job if I
Stay tuned. More after the break.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Hello, everyone, and this is David with Nourishment, the Spiritual Warrior, joined with Dr. Elisa. We have a special guest, Liam, coming on. We have Ryan Mutzel in Austin. And just for the break, Lisa was asking me about solutions because of the problems we're facing with, it seems, collectivism destroying, leaning over individual rights, and in colleges, in preventing people from speaking truth, in the media, in comments on the internet. We have people, showing that with Harvard, they're saying it's approximately 50%. Some of the different documents I've been reading online is academic that gets in, 50% is just legacy or friends, family, whatever reason they want to let you in. And we were pointing out the issues where you've got Lockheed Martin's failures, and this Marilyn A. Houston being a Harvard graduate. We have the failure of Caesars with another Harvard graduate. And we have the Obama administration, $7 trillion of debt stacked with Harvard graduates. And, I was talking about overseas. I've met so many Americans who are going to college overseas, and talking to some of them, they're like, I just couldn't get into a top school in the US, and they have great scores. We have the American Asian groups, nonprofits filing lawsuits against Harvard and other Ivies because they're shown they're being denied getting access to schools. And, these may be some of the best and brightest we have. We have China becoming officially, in many articles, the number one economy in the world, but we're denying Asian Americans access to US schools, and we owe China trillions of dollars. It seems like one should let the best and brightest in, and see a thriving economy, maybe economic growth. In Australia, we have a thriving Chinese population, and they do an incredible job. We have just an exploding technology university there, and we are China's number one trade partner. China's number one trade partner. So, like with solutions, people have to get really mature and realize that they're going to have to knuckle down, and they're going to have to look at, if they are being prevented from starting their own companies, if they're not being taught how to create their own things. Like in college, you're learning how to use Photoshop, but why aren't you learning how to create your own Photoshop? You're learning how to use Word documents all the time, but why aren't you being taught how to create your own Word documents? We've got China coming out. They're going to not be selling iPhones in China anymore. They're going to be selling their own brands. This billionaire came out in China, and they've got their own operating system, which they created themselves. It's the end of iOS. As an operating system for the China market, because Chinese kids are learning how to create. They're not learning how to repeat. They're learning how to create. And American colleges and schools, we need to go back to what made America great. Why Nikola Tesla came here. Why so many things were invented. We need to start teaching how to create things, not how to repeat things. We need to stand up for individual rights and not this collectivism of wearing, the same eyelashes, the sorority group, because it may help you get a job. Because you're going to meet someone who is really important that's in the cosmetic industry. These kids should be learning how to making their own eyelashes if they're in eyelashes that much, not repeating ideologies. They should be learning how to create. And that's the problem. We have this handout group, and, bring up the article of, I think it was approximately 20% of the Harvard kids were found cheating their exams. But, can you really blame them? I mean, looking at it, if you fail with a $1 trillion fighter, being a Harvard graduate, you get another job. If you fail with Caesars Casino, you get another job. I mean, what type of, is it who you know, not what you know? What type of message are we sending? And that's the issue. Like, in the US, we're not seeing how fast Russia is growing, how fast China is growing, how fast the rest of the world is growing. Taiwan is growing. Taiwan makes, I think, close to 80% of all the computers. And they're creating, they're building. If people, from a grassroots, people from a conservative or a liberal or a libertarian political movement, if we don't start, promoting the best and brightest, protecting individual rights, if we don't start teaching our kids how to create, and yes, they'll break the monopolies. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Dell, big pharmaceutical companies, they'll all break and fall apart, because if young people our generation, millennials, start creating things, we're going to create, better things, because we're standing on the shoulders of giants, which is nature, is a true giant. And we take away the disruption, the red tape, and we start creating. We're going to catch up to the rest of the world, which are falling behind. But it just seems like these, government colleges rotating doors is just the red tape that if we don't start creating, is going to be the red tape that sinks the country, where, losing the position as the world's number one economic power. Now we're about to lose to Russia, as Russia is officially, I think, they are now the number one nuclear power in the world, an understanding of nuclear technology in the world. Where Russia is now being said to be the top producer of combat planes with its Su-35s, because of our S-35 failure, and their sales are incredible for those planes. We don't have a choice, but eventually I think it's going to be self-correcting. I think if we don't allow our generation to create and compete, and we're being held down by, these social circles of academic social circles, collectivist groups, then eventually you're going to have a country turn up and be the world's number one power, which is on the horizon.
Yeah, definitely. So
the solution is, you have to be a part of the solution, which teach our kids to create, get involved in college and teach students how to create. If you graduate college, don't so much look for jobs, but look how to create. If you graduate from law school, don't so much look at trying to make money from first lawsuits all day. Look at getting behind people and companies that create stuff. Because we have to create as a nation. We're creative people. God created us to create. That's the solution, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. And, if these people keep on screwing up and our economy eventually fails, everyone's going to have to create for themselves anyway. That's what it's going to come down to. And so eventually it's going to turn into that. I think. I hope it becomes an easy transition and not something difficult.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at the incredible level of art that's coming out of China, the quality of their films, the quality of their TV shows, the quality of their version of Facebook, where you can actually even do money transfers to each other. I was talking to some people from China, and they said, we used to love American-made phones and software, but he's like, we do a better job now. So we don't use it anymore. And I was talking to some kids who were Chinese American. They went, grew up in America, and they graduated, did really well in school, and they couldn't get jobs. And so they went back to mainland China, got great jobs. And they're like, they're like, I wish I could spend more time in the US, but I just can't get a job. I got perfect scores. I worked really hard, and I'm just not allowed. It's almost like there's an invisible barrier. And so what are they doing? They're creating games. They're creating, we look at China's gaming, they have 20 million people playing some of these games. So their industry is huge. And their quality of their games are, I think it's coming pretty obvious. Their gaming is number one in the world. And their e-games is huge market. And we've been held out of that, by red tape in America. We've been prevented from making money from gaming. for a few people to make money out of it.
Yeah.
But we have to break through this red tape and be creators again.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution. And David, I know we have about 30 seconds till the break, but I know you're going with Andrew to the casino. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a tournament today. We'll be playing the best minds in the world, and we hope to represent the beautiful people of Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, America.
So it's not rigged so that Harvard automatically wins?
There's always a spare seat for Harvard graduates to play the cash game. We love Harvard graduates. So please send Loveman and
lots of money.
Do you like people looking over your shoulder while you surf the net? Probably not, but that could be happening if you're not using a proxy. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. I'll be back with an easy, privacy-friendly proxy tip in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
A proxy is a privacy tool that lets you view web pages through the identity of a third-party computer. You never make connection with the web pages you visit directly, so they can't see your personal information like your IP address or your location. They also can't put cookies or malware on your computer. There are many proxies on the internet, but one of the easiest to use is at StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine. Your search results are automatically delivered with a free proxy option. Just click the word proxy under a search result to view that website anonymously. That way, the websites you visit will only see StartPage, not you. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, wishing you safe internet searching. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Chemtrails.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. It is 3:34 p.m. here in Austin, Texas. My lovely co-host, Elisa Wampel, is in Las Vegas in between treating patients. And Dave and Andrew were both on earlier, and they are now headed to the casino to get in some poker action here. A fair game where, unfortunately, maybe different economies, it's not rigged. You get certain cards, you have to play the cards, and you just let the cards lie as they may. So we also have a wonderful guest I'd like to bring on. This is Dr. Liam Stone. I know you have a lot of other initials after your name, so you can feel free to explain that. But I know you had a few comments, too, on our previous discussion.
Yeah, I was listening in for about the last hour. I'm really enjoying it. So what I wanted to share with everyone here is, since I am a reverend, I'm going to start by sharing the tidbit that I'm going to be sharing at the Austin Universe Festival at my keynote address, which is titled ATX-ITAC or ITAC, Who is Inside of You? Okay? And so I'm going to start with this particular verse from the New Testament in the New Modern English Language Version. It's Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. Christ has set us free to live a free life. So take your stand. Never let anyone put a harness of slavery on you. I am emphatic about this. The moment any one of you submits to circumcision or any other rule-keeping system, at the same moment, Christ's hard-won gift of freedom is squandered. I repeat my warning. The person who accepts the way of circumcision trades all the advantages of the free life in Christ for the obligation of the slave life of the law. So, what Dave was saying about creativity, without freedom, we don't have creativity. That's one. And then two, then later on in my talk, if you guys come, I'll be relating this to the first and second law of thermodynamics, which, if you summarize it, and physicists, I'm just, who are listening, please understand I'm making it real general, and I am not, well, I am a physicist, but I'm not, it's for the general public. So it basically says that the universe in a state is always going from a state of order to disorder. All right. Now, that being said, the scientific method, which is what pretty much all science and technology is based upon, okay, states that you can repeat a repeatable incident, or you can, under the same conditions, you can repeat the same incident. Do you get it? Now, those two are from the scientific background, and they conflict. They don't, which means it's a lie. Do you see what I'm saying? So within that context, really the only thing you have is freedom from laws, from systems, from methods. It's pure creativity. And that's what I want to say. I agree with Dave actually tremendously that he talked a lot about China versus the United States. China is doing better than the United States, in my opinion, economically, technologically, computer-wise, within the urban areas where they're building magnificent structures in the city. That is true. And we have to step up, okay? There's no doubt about that. And what I want to say, too, is we need to remember that we do have something they don't have. And that is, I've been to China in the rural areas. The majority of the people that live in that country do not live in Beijing and Shanghai or even Guangzhou, okay? They live in a non-urban area, and they live in utter poverty. Their land is not as fertile as ours, especially here in Texas. You go to a small town, you take the lowest, poorest individual in the smallest rural area here in Texas or all other parts of the United States, and you compare them to the poorest, average non-urban area people in China. We are heaven and they are hell. And that's something to keep in mind. Also, here in our country, at least in Texas, people are allowed to have the right to defend their human private property. They don't have private property in China. It is a communist country, which means everything is owned by the state and the elite. So the son of an elite governmental official in communist China can have a gun. Do you know that? But not if you're not part of that government. So our country is superior. We have more potential because every person has a chance to be the next Nikola Tesla, because they can grow up in a family where you can have guns, you can have your own private property. Now, we have some liberal movements that are trying to change that, but still, we can still have guns. We have private property legally, and we have a right to defend our family and our children, our spouses, okay? However way you want to do it, unarmed tactical combat, armed tactical combat, in proper ethics. The ethics in China is bad, okay? They're focusing only on winning. There's virtually no human rights there. If you Google little girl run over by truck in China, you will cry. That's in an urban area. A little 2-year-old little girl, a 1.5-year-old little girl, toddler, was crossing the street. A truck ran her over. And then 3 more ran over. People looked at her, walked right by. You got to look at this video online.
Yeah, I heard. It's really interesting. I've heard in China what it is that it's actually if like they injure someone, they usually actually try to just end up killing them because you end up having to pay all the medical bills and everything.
Right.
So it's almost better to just kill the person.
The punishment is so high. Okay, so China is not good. Now, the majority of the west coast of the United States has been influenced by communist China. And this is where I'm going with. This is the thing I told Ryan I wanted to speak about is, if you notice, on any public forum, all right, we're talking about the Middle East. We're sending some more Coast Guard to Japan to guard against, whatever, right? Okay, the reality is this. Prior to 1950, after World War II, the United States thrived, prior to 1960, actually. What did we do after World War II as a nation, okay? And I want people, Ryan, please, I hope people call in. Ryan will take the calls and refer the discussion with me. All right. This has never been said publicly, what I'm about to say. And I, as a reverend, I'm constrained by God to speak the truth. Okay. This is the truth. What happened after 1940, World War II, and before 1960? We, as the United States, we set up several United States naval bases, as well as several United States Air Force bases in Taiwan, previously known as Formosa. We had Americans living there. We had Americans who were Christians, who were kind and ethical living there. And nothing happened. We didn't have problems in North Korea. We don't have this economic war with communist China. We didn't have problems in that sector of the
that's
world.
true. Hold that thought, Liam, 1 second. Coming up to a break here. More with Liam Stone after the break. Welcome back to Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior. This is Ryan Metzel. My lovely co-host Elisa Wampel is in Las Vegas. Dave and Andrew have already departed to the casino for poker. And on the line, our amazing guest with wealth and many lifetimes of knowledge, Dr. Liam Stone. So, Liam, would you please continue with what you were talking about before the break?
Right. So before the break, I was saying around 1950 or 60, slowly but surely, we have been pulling out all of our Air Force bases, closing them down, taking Americans out of Taiwan, our naval bases, to where until recently only a few Coast Guard ships were patrolling the China Strait, which is that water between Formosa, Taiwan, and communist China, all right, mainland China. And that we put our forces in the Middle East, all right? And that's why we're having problems with North Korea. We have problems with now China is financially trying to challenge us with this urban economic war as well as a propaganda war. It's an info war to make China look like they're the most powerful country. But the reality is here in the United States, if you go I've been there, and the poorest average person in China is very poor compared to the average rural person here in the United States and here in Texas, because we have the right to private property. You have the right to defend our own land and property. So basically with that, the whole point of where all of this is going is that if you look at even our mainstream media here in the West, you never hear Alex Jones. And I want Alex Jones to bring me on the show if he wants, and I'll go and I'll do this if he wants me to do this. All right? And let's talk about Taiwan and Formosa. Because right now, because our country is in such dire straits, where Dave is right about that, okay? Yeah. That the Senate is currently voting. Now, you probably never heard this in the media. Currently, the U.S. Senate, the United States Senate, is voting on whether or not to replace all of the closed down military installations in Taiwan. Now, here's the deal. Taiwan and Puerto Rico are U.S. territories. Right? Hawaii was the 50th U.S. territory, became the 50th state. Puerto Rico is the 51st U.S. territory that's going to be potentially the next state of the U.S. And Taiwan is the 52nd U.S. territory. So the Taiwanese want us there. They want our culture. They want our military power to defend them. And we have pulled out since around the 50s until now. And this is the problem. Okay, we have to send our military there. There's American families who have lived there for a couple of generations and have been forced to come home to the United States. Do you understand what I mean? So you don't hear about this, right?
No.
And recently, recently, and this is a huge news, Taiwan elected their first female president in the history of their country. And this woman, her name is Zhou Enlai. She is not Chinese. She's racially and ethnically Taiwanese. So China's pissed. They want independence from China. They don't want to be called China. It's called the Democratic Progressive Party. She's from that. As a result, the United States has kowtowed to China's desire, and we took out our last Coast Guards. Okay? Now you're going to have problems in North Korea. You're going to have problems in China. You know, we have nuclear submarines just a few miles. We're talking about 10 miles off the coast of Oregon, Seattle, and California right now. All right? They're Chinese nuclear submarines. Okay? We have
All right.
supposedly, commercial barges that are doing transport, like for commercial, but they're actually warships that are of Chinese. Like when China ships their stuff over to Los Angeles or whatever, that port, they look like regular, like freighters, right? Like Han Solo's Millennium Falcon, right? But they're actually armed. They're armed. They can attack any time. They come in and out of the port of L.A. And so anyway, back to the verse that I read in Galatians. It's about freedom. It's about having no tyranny and slavery. And no matter how good China looks right now, and did I mention while we're on the air, just Google little girl gets run over by truck in China. That is what a tyrannical government, little girl walking across the street. This is not even in a small town. This is an urban area. She's run over by a truck. Nobody helped her to pick her up off the middle of the street.
Yeah,
Another
so sad.
vehicle ran her over. Nobody picked her up. And eventually, the little girl's mom's friend saw her and ran over and picked her up. It was too late. The little girl's dead. The parents were at work, okay? Both parents had to work. So their economy is not that much better than ours, okay? We're the only country that had a history where only one of the two parents could go to work and make enough money to support the family, okay? This has not happened in China, all right? If you look at history.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah. We've had it at one time, and we can get it back. We can get it back, right? We can get it back, though. You know why? because we can have the right to defend our property. We have the right to private property. Communism in itself is defined as no private property. You can't have weapons at your house to defend your own family. There's no citizen militia, meaning here in the United States, our Constitution is, and here in Texas, every man, woman, and child is a soldier if war comes, and we will volunteer. We have a volunteer military. They don't have that in China. Everybody's drafted. Once they're done, they don't want nothing to do with guns. The ones that do end up coming to the United States, becoming American citizens. So as long as we keep our system intact, we're cool. So the good news is our Senate is currently voting on reinstating Katy Air Force Base, Chiang Kai-shek Air Force. There's so many things. The United States Air Force, by the way, is incorporated in San Antonio, Texas. It's a Texas institution. Okay?
That's funny.
Air Force, we can defeat any army by dropping stuff on them. It's not that hard. Okay? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you said they're voting
We have nukes. We have nukes. No, Russia has nukes. Right. Yeah. So anyway, so that's truth. Now, in order for us to be free and creative, we have to have security. The only way we're going to have security is by doing what the Bible says. We are all warrior priests. As Christians, the Christian Bible says we're all warrior priests. Okay? We have the capacity to bless and to destroy in the will of God in terms of ethical, what's right and what's wrong. So I urge everyone to watch little girls gets run over by truck in China. Just Google it. Okay, it's terrible, and that is the result. There's absolutely no morals there. So, and without morals and ethics, and when there's tyranny, there's no creative freedom that Dave talked about. They do work very hard, but it's at the cost of being inhumane. So that's my thing. Y'all have any questions?
Yeah. Well, I have an interesting comment. I've not yet been to China, but we spent some time in India. I've been there twice, and I did see the huge separation between how the rich kind of elite people live and how the poor people live. And one of our friends, he's kind of more in that upper class group, and he went to China to do some business. And now he lives in India. He's been there his whole life, and he said to me, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe the conditions of the people working in the factories in China." And this is from someone from India, and I've seen the poverty in India.
India's nasty, isn't it? I've been there.
Yeah,
and
like so I was
urine.
like, wow.
It's gross. Makes Hollywood Boulevard smell good. Hollywood Boulevard always smells like urine, and there's human feces on the ground, okay? But India is way dirtier than that. And so if your Indian friend said that about China, imagine how bad it really is.
Yeah.
China's putting up an info war. China's doing an info war. It's a propaganda war to make themselves look good when they really aren't. That's the reality of it. To trick us into believing that the communist ideology is better when it really isn't. That's it. So simple. I don't hear Alex Jones
and I think maybe
talking about Taiwan.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't hear him talking about the Taiwan question. The reason our country has gone down, is because, in my humble opinion, is because we've pulled out our forces in the only Asian country on the planet that invites us and is our 52nd U.S. territory that hopes to become a state. We still have military in Puerto Rico. But why did we pull out of fucking Taiwan? Excuse my language. You have to delete that. Okay?
Maybe we could bleep that out.
Yeah, bleep that out. Right. And a
there's a reason why?
Swear. Read the Bible. Paul the Apostle swears. Raka. That's I think you don't have to bleep that out. That's like a Hebrew curse word. Okay?
Yeah.
But think about that. In order to protect Israel, we have to secure Taiwan again. Okay? Yes, America has a stronger connection with Israel. But by trying to put our forces in the Middle East, instead of securing another area, we're losing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm sure whoever's going to be the next president, that's not really what matters. It's what we decide at the level of the Senate and the Supreme Court for a lot of things. That's what's made a difference. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Alyssa, for sharing about your Indian friend.
Oh,
Brian,
yeah, absolutely.
Questions?
And we're coming up to the end of our show here. So thank you for sharing your passion about these subjects.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ryan, for inviting me today. I wish I could have come on earlier, but we had a very, very creative... are you going to come to the creative Field Mojo? It's a game that is made just in Austin, Texas, by Austinites.
Yeah, there's so many amazing activities here in Austin. Definitely want to eventually get out there.
They're creative, too, yeah. Yeah, they're creative.
Cool. All right. Well, everyone, coming up to the end of the show here, thank you for listening to Nourishment for the Spiritual Warrior.
See you all.
Thank you, Dr. Alyssa.
You're welcome. Thank you, Liam.
Thanks.
Stay tuned next week.